He was not a general. He was not a soldier. But without him, Hitler's armies would have crawled instead of advanced. Fritz Todt was something far more dangerous than a battlefield commander, an engineer who learned how to turn ideology into infrastructure, concrete into control, and technical efficiency into a weapon of the state. Before the tanks rolled, before the Luftwaffe screamed over Europe, Todt had already built the pathways of conquest. Fritz Todt was born on September 4, 1891, in the industrial town of Pforzheim. His father owned a modest factory, but young Todt cared little for textiles. He was obsessed with machines. Mechanical parts, engines, early automobiles. He saw beauty in steel and order in geometry. After finishing secondary school, he entered the Technical University of Karlsruhe, later moving to Munich to refine his engineering abilities. Nothing in his quiet academic life suggested that he would one day build the physical skeleton of a dictatorship. When World War I erupted in 1914, Todt volunteered. He served first as an officer, then as an aviation observer, a role so dangerous it earned him the Iron Cross for bravery. Surviving the war did not radicalize him through violence. Instead, it cemented his belief that Germany needed structure, discipline, and massive reconstruction. He wanted to rebuild, not destroy. Yet those desires would eventually feed the deadliest machine of the 20th century. After the war, Todt completed his doctorate and joined the construction firm Sager and Werner, working on tunnels, alpine roads, and large-scale civil engineering. The chaos of the Weimar Republic, collapsing currency, mass unemployment, political extremism, convinced him that Germany needed modernization on a grand national level. Roads were expanding, automobiles multiplying, and Todt developed a reputation as a man who could impose order on chaos with mathematics, concrete, and relentless organization. Politically, Todt aligned early with the National Socialist movement. In January 1922, long before Hitler was famous, Todt joined the Nazi Party. He was not valued as a speaker or propagandist. He was valued as a problem solver. When the Nazis identified a technical challenge, they sent for Todt. By 1931, Todt had joined the SS, rising under Heinrich Himmler. While other early Nazis battled for ideological purity or personal power, Todt quietly positioned himself as the future technical architect of the regime. In 1932, he earned another doctorate, this time from the Technical University of Munich, with a dissertation analyzing defects in road construction, the kind of work only an engineer could love, but exactly the kind of expertise a dictatorship could weaponize. His deep research impressed academics and industrial leaders alike. When the Nazis seized power in 1933, it was obvious who should be appointed general inspector for German road construction. Todt's first great project and his entry into history was the Reichsautobahn, the vast modern highway network that became one of the most iconic symbols of Nazi engineering. And before I go further, this video is not free. The price is simple: a like, a comment, and a subscription. Pay it now and we continue. Because what Todt built next changed Europe forever. The highways made him famous, but fortifications made him indispensable. By 1938, Fritz Todt was no longer just Germany's chief engineer. He had become something far more powerful, the man who could transform Hitler's dreams into concrete reality. Bridges, tunnels, dams, bunkers, factories, every major project in the Reich now passed through his hands. And to handle this impossibly expanding empire of construction, Todt created something unprecedented. Organization Todt, a hybrid machine of engineers, private contractors, bureaucrats, and paramilitary labor units, all operating under a single command structure, his own. Officially, the OT was a technical organization. In practice, it became an industrial army. The first target of this new engineering force, the West Wall, known to the outside world as the Siegfried Line. Stretching across Germany's western frontier, the West Wall was one of the largest construction projects in European history. Thousands of bunkers, anti-tank obstacles, trenches, command posts, fortified tunnels, and defensive grids spanning hundreds of kilometers. France had the Maginot Line. Hitler demanded a counterpart, and Todt delivered. Construction began in 1938 using professional workers, private contractors, and tens of thousands of conscripts from the Reich Labor Service. Organization Todt coordinated over 500,000 people, issuing orders with the precision of a military general. Todt demanded efficiency, speed, and loyalty. Labor was divided into strict categories. Engineers designed, supervisors enforced, and the workers, many of them coerced, endured grueling shifts with minimal rest. By September 1939, when war finally erupted, the West Wall spanned 630 kilometers and included more than 18,000 bunkers and anti-tank fortifications. Its military value remains debated to this day. Some see it as a psychological weapon more than a defensive one, but its propaganda value was undeniable. Germany appeared prepared, disciplined, and capable of monumental engineering feats. Much of that illusion of strength was Todt's doing. But while the West Wall made Todt a national icon, it also sharpened the internal rivalries that defined Nazi Germany. His rising power threatened Hermann Göring's four-year plan, which controlled resource allocation for war production. Todt believed engineering must lead politics, not obey it. Göring believed the opposite. Behind the public facade of unity, Todt was gaining enemies, but he was also becoming too valuable to remove. In 1939, Organization Todt expanded beyond fortifications. It absorbed road projects, electrical systems, bridges, industrial complexes, and military infrastructure across annexed territories like Austria and the Sudetenland. Whenever the Wehrmacht moved, OT followed, repairing roads, restoring bridges, building logistics hubs, and converting conquered land into usable military infrastructure. Todt's reputation for ruthless efficiency made him indispensable. When the Wehrmacht stormed into Poland in September 1939, OT units moved in right behind them. Within days, they repaired railways, restored highways, built airstrips, and created supply hubs. Hitler was impressed, and the praise mattered, because Todt was about to enter the highest echelon of the Nazi state. On March 17, 1940, Todt received the ultimate promotion, Reich Minister for Armaments and Munitions. He now controlled not just construction, but the colossal machinery of German wartime industrial production. With one decree, Todt became one of the most powerful men in Europe. And he was only getting started. When France collapsed in June 1940, Fritz Todt's empire entered its most aggressive phase. Overnight, Organization Todt was no longer merely Germany's builder. It became the machine that would fortify an entire continent. Under Todt's supervision, OT engineers designed and constructed the vast system later known as the Atlantic Wall. Stretching from Norway to the French-Spanish border, this network of bunkers, artillery positions, submarine pens, radar stations, and coastal defenses grew into one of the largest engineering projects in world history. The submarine bases alone, like those in Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, and La Rochelle, showcased Todt's ruthless brilliance. Their roofs were up to 7 meters thick, reinforced with specially mixed concrete designed to withstand direct hits from Allied bombs. These fortresses still stand today, nearly indestructible even to modern demolition equipment. They were monuments to Todt's belief that engineering could shape the destiny of nations. At the same time, Todt oversaw the construction of auxiliary airfields, munitions depots, fuel storage networks, torpedo workshops, and transportation systems needed to keep the Luftwaffe and Kriegsmarine operating. Wherever German forces moved, OT left behind roads, pipelines, barracks, and logistical hubs. The speed and scale were staggering, but so was the human cost. Because as the war expanded, the labor force changed. Voluntary workers became scarce. Germany was fighting on multiple fronts, and manpower shortages became severe. The solution was brutal: forced labor. By late 1941, Organization Todt had transformed into a gigantic system of coerced workers, prisoners of war, conscripted civilians, and tens of thousands taken from occupied territories. By 1944, OT controlled more than 1.3 million laborers, many working under horrific conditions. Long hours, starvation-level rations, constant exhaustion, and minimal medical care were routine. Thousands died building Todt's miracles of engineering. Todt's personal view of forced labor remains debated. Some accounts claim he privately expressed concerns about the inefficiency and cruelty. But crucially, he never opposed the system. The only thing that mattered to him was production, output, tonnage, speed. As long as concrete was poured and bunkers rose, Todt considered the job done. His empire blurred the line between military necessity and exploitation. Inside the Nazi hierarchy, he wielded enormous influence, but also attracted powerful enemies. Goering resented Todt's new authority over arms production. Himmler coveted control over forced labor forces, especially as the SS economy expanded. And Bormann, always lurking near Hitler, feared Todt's access to the Führer. Despite this political minefield, Todt often impressed Hitler with direct, blunt assessments. He argued for practical logistics over ideological ambition. In late 1941, Todt reportedly told Hitler that the war in the East could not be won without either ending the conflict quickly or radically reorganizing German industry. It was one of the few times anyone dared deliver such a warning. Still, Todt kept working. In the final months of 1941, Organization Todt became the logistical backbone of the German war machine. Its operations stretched from the Arctic Circle to the Balkans. Its workers, both free and enslaved, lived and died under Todt's expanding authority. Germany's military fortunes were beginning to change. The Eastern Front was becoming a nightmare. Winter, distance, and Soviet resistance slowed everything. And the man who kept the army supplied, the man who literally built Hitler's war, was reaching his breaking point. And then, in early 1942, everything ended. In the early months of 1942, Fritz Todt was more indispensable than ever. Organization Todt was now the circulatory system of Hitler's armies, pumping labor, materials, and infrastructure to every front. Yet Todt himself was exhausted, physically, politically, and psychologically. The war he had helped engineer was spiraling out of control. The logistical collapse in the Soviet Union frustrated him daily, and infighting within the Nazi leadership grew worse with every setback. Todt had become too influential for some, too independent for others, and too honest for Hitler's liking. On February 6, 1942, Todt flew to the Wolfschanze, Hitler's Eastern Front headquarters, to present yet another grim report about Germany's deteriorating situation in Russia. Eyewitnesses later claimed Todt argued that the war could not be won without massive industrial restructuring and a complete shift in strategy. Hitler reportedly dismissed him coldly, insisting victory was still inevitable. The meeting ended abruptly, leaving Todt visibly frustrated. What happened next remains one of the most debated mysteries of the Third Reich. Later that morning, Todt boarded his personal Heinkel He-111 aircraft for the return flight to Berlin. Only moments after takeoff, the plane exploded in a fireball and crashed near the runway. Everyone on board was killed instantly. The official cause? A technical malfunction. But almost no one believed that explanation. Even at the time, rumors spread quickly. Some suspected sabotage. Others believed it was an assassination ordered by Hitler himself. Todt had become too outspoken, too powerful, and too essential, a dangerous combination inside the Nazi hierarchy. Replacing him with someone more loyal and more ruthless would have been strategically convenient. And that is exactly what happened. Within just 2 hours of Todt's death, Hitler appointed Albert Speer as the new Reich Minister for Armaments and Munitions. The speed was astonishing, almost as if the decision had been prepared in advance. Speer, unlike Todt, was an obedient architect of Hitler's ambitions, willing to expand forced labor programs and push Germany into total war. Under Speer, Organization Todt became even more entangled with the SS, slave labor camps, and the darkest machinery of the Nazi state. As for the legacy of Fritz Todt, history remembers him in two sharply different ways. On one hand, he was the brilliant engineer who built the Autobahn, modernized German infrastructure, and created some of the most advanced military fortifications of the era. His organizational genius and technical mastery were undeniable. Without him, the Wehrmacht's early lightning victories would likely have been impossible. On the other hand, he was a central architect of a system that enslaved millions. The projects he created, especially the Atlantic Wall and the East Front supply network, consumed human lives at a staggering rate. Todt's empire became a machine of coercion and brutality, turning engineering into an instrument of oppression. Whether or not he personally endorsed the worst abuses, he never tried to stop them. His death remains an enigma. Accident, assassination, internal power struggle? No definitive evidence has ever surfaced. But what is clear is this. The moment Todt's plane fell from the sky, the last traces of technical pragmatism inside the Nazi war economy died with him. His replacement sealed the fate of millions and accelerated the collapse of the regime he helped build. The story of Fritz Todt is not one of a general or soldier, but of a man who proved that wars are not only fought on battlefields, they're built in concrete, steel, and human suffering.